Another day is here, and you're ready for it. What to wear? Check. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Check. Planning for what's next and how to save for it? That's where Bank of America can help. For your financial to-dos, Bank of America has experts ready to help get you closer to your goals. Get started at one of our local financial centers or 24/7 in our mobile banking app. Find a location near you at bankofamerica.com/talktous. What would you like the power to do? Mobile banking requires downloading the app and is only available for select devices. Message and data rates may apply. Bank of America N.A., member FDIC.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hello and welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. This is Sunday's edition of our day-to-day walkthrough of the European Championships. Now, full disclosure, we are recording this on Saturday, so we don't know the outcome of Saturday's games as yet, but we had to get this one done in advance. So we're going to discuss Sunday's games, Karl, which of course include England, but they begin with Poland versus the Netherlands. Liverpool captain Virgil van Dijk is obviously captain of the Netherlands. Cody Gakpo and Ryan Gravenberch are also in that squad. Cody, I think, is expected to start. Gravenberch, not so much. But this should be a decent enough test for them. I don't think the Poles are quite as decent, quite as good as they were a few years ago. Obviously, the decline of Lewandowski. Zielinski's a bit older as well. But it should still be a decent test for the Dutch and their credentials as, you know, one of the top teams in this tournament.
Agreed, but before we get into the game, can I please bring up maybe the first gripe of the tournament? And this is a gripe on international tournaments in general.
Absolutely.
Why does one group of, like, D, for example, in this case, play before Group C? This really bugs me. Why can't they do it in order? Why can't they have the two Group C games as the 2 o'clock and the 5 o'clock, and then Group D, the next group, as the next game at 8?
Yeah, this annoys me as well, and my assumption is it's because they want England in that 8 p.m. prime time slot. But like you, it does bug me that we're getting the Group D match before the two Group C matches, and then we don't get the other Group D match until those two. Like, so it's Group D, then 2 from Group C, and then Group D again. That does annoy me.
And we do it again in the knockouts as well. Like later on, you'll get the second knockout game before the first one, in effect. And then again, at the end, you get the 8th one before the 7th one. It really bugs me.
Yeah, it does me as well. I the only thing I can assume is that they want the Serbia-England game to be the primetime game for Sunday, to be the one that brings most of the eyeballs. Now, what I will say is, if from an Irish football watching point of view, the more primetime one is actually the 5 p.m. slot, because we're used to watching games at 4:30 on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's the slot that England should be in. And I think Slovenia-Denmark at 2 p.m. would have been a bit better as well. And then you get Poland versus the Netherlands in that 8 o'clock slot. And I genuinely think that would have worked better, but I do think it's probably down to how they're viewing TV audiences.
Right, mine are great, over and done with. I'm quite excited to see how the Netherlands restructure themselves, because they were, as we sort of discussed previously, building something in their way. Not necessarily in the exact way that we felt might be the best way for them, let's say. I know you're not a fan of the head coach. I think they've been very, very slow at bringing through a couple of players who should be in and around the squad. Ian Matson's a probably the best example of that because he's only been called up as a replacement and he still hasn't got a cap. But in general, it's quite interesting to see some of these players come through, and even though it's a little bit late for some of them, the group itself is interesting, and having to react to setbacks like losing an entire midfield in the last week of the season, plus the 2 weeks before the tournament, that's something which is tough to overcome for any group, and I'm really excited to see who steps up the most for them in that regard. Like, we know in attack there's one or two of them who have to step up, and if they don't, basically if Cody doesn't have himself a good couple of weeks, and if Memphis is nowhere near fit, which he's played like 100 minutes in La Liga since mid-March, I think it was, they're not going anywhere. Simple as that. They just won't. So who steps up from that other group? Who of the late call-ups, who of the extra attackers who are not nominally in the starting group brings themselves forward, shows what they're really capable of, and makes themselves suddenly a Dutch starter? The other thing, obviously, is goalkeeper, because it's very odd the way the Netherlands have done things. We saw Noppert being goalkeeper for one tournament, having done nothing beforehand, and has done nothing since. He's not even here this time.
Yeah, I mean, that was a rather bizarre thing with him. He's not somebody that I think anybody was looking at 2 years prior to and thinking, oh, this is a guy that's capable of being the Dutch number one, because he just wasn't very good. You know, he was largely a squad player or playing for lesser teams. He wasn't someone that was getting the big interest, and he gets a decent move, and all of a sudden he's number one, and now he's out of the picture altogether. I think the goalkeeping group, I'm not a big fan of Fleck, and I have to say, wasn't impressed by him this past season at Brentford. I think Bijlow would have comfortably established himself as the number one, but he's had so many injuries over the last 5 years that he's never been able to fully get that run of games in the squad, because he's missing almost every second international meetup. And then obviously Verbruggen is the big talent here, 21 years of age. He had a weird season at Brighton, though I don't think it was his fault. I think it was down to the manager chopping and changing him and Jason Steele constantly. But I do think he's the one in terms of talent. But it is a bit weird. You mentioned them not necessarily bringing through certain players. I think if you were to ask a lot of people to name like the 4 Dutch players that you think they could build around for the next 10 years, I think the names Frimpong, Maatsen, Simmons, and Xerxes would come up for a lot of people. And they have 18 caps between them, and 2 of them aren't capped at all. Like, that's not ideal going into a tournament to have 4 players who could be really important to you have so little experience. And as you said, they're still heavily reliant on Memphis Depay in attack, which doesn't seem an ideal thing in the year 2024. If they'd been more proactive with Xerxes, with Brian Brobby, who's only got 2 caps himself over the last couple of years, those players might be more ready to step into the breach and, you know, carry a bit more of the load. Instead, you're looking at Cody, who's incredibly frustrating, Wout Weghorst, who's had a strange couple of years, Daniel Malin, who's been a big disappointment for the most part at Dortmund, and Steven Bergwijn, who, when he was at PSV, this kid was being hyped to the moon, but we saw at Spurs that he was quite average, and he's back playing in the Eredivisie in his prime for a reason, you know. So it is a strange group. Losing the midfield, obviously, is huge, because especially Koopmeiners, in the form that he was in, you would have hoped he could carry that into the tournament, but they're gone and they're going to have to figure things out. We know they'll be strong defensively, but I think there is question marks pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think it's kind of what makes it an interesting start for them, obviously. It will be a test, but I don't really rate much of this Poland squad, to be honest. I find it a bit one-dimensional. They're obviously the very, very best players of them are now either past their best or not necessarily going to be involved, not even necessarily going to be fully fit by the looks of Swiderski and Lewandowski. But yeah, there's a few players who are decent and can make an impact, but generally speaking, as a group, I think this Poland squad is not quite as much.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think they're the one player I do really like is Sebastian Sawinski, who's at Fenerbahce, but he hasn't really developed the way it looked like he would when he was sort of making a name for himself at 18, 19. There's talent there, but like Zalewski from Roma is a very interesting player, but how much are we going to see of them? Where are they going to play? And he's not going to be able to do much by himself if the likes of Swiderski and Lewandowski are not there, because they're the real match winners that they have in the squad. Give me a prediction then.
I will go a tricky one for Netherlands to get themselves started with a kind of a new centre of the team. I'm going to go 1-1.
Ooh. I'll go 2-1 to the Dutch. Virgil to step up and score late on, carry on this great goal-scoring run that he's in. Right, after that then we do go to Group C, and we get maybe a game that a lot of people are overlooking as one that they might not pay too much attention to, and that is Slovenia versus Denmark, which will be one of two things most likely. It'll be either really boring or it'll be 4-4, because these are two teams that they kind of fall into what you were saying on yesterday's show. Those groups where it's about the strength of the group rather than the individual. Now, there's some exceptionally talented players in both groups. For the Slovenians, obviously Jan Oblak, the goalkeeper, the captain, is their best player, the most important player. He's exceptional. Jakub Bijol, the centre-back from Udinese, is interesting. Josip Ilicic is still in the squad, and it's just fun to watch him play football. But of course, I think the player everybody wants to see more of is Benjamin Sesko, the 21-year-old striker from RB Leipzig, who's been linked with Premier League moves, but has decided to stay put at Leipzig, at least for another year. He's the one everybody's got eyes for. And then on the Danish side of things, I mean, these players are probably a lot better known to people because so many of them have played in England, but they're heavily reliant on their own 21-year-old striker, Rasmus Højlund, to get them goals. We know they'll be good defensively, they'll be well organised, they'll be hard-working in midfield, but outside of Højlund, I mean, Christian Eriksen's the top goal scorer for them with 41, but he's quite significantly declined over the last couple of years. What a wonderful story for him, though, to make it other Euros after what happened at the last one. How do you see this game playing out?
I expect Denmark to be pretty dominant in terms of possession. I think Slovenia are basically going to a little bit reliant on sort of second balls coming down from Sesko, just because that's, build-up style. But their results have been really good. They did play each other in the qualifiers. Obviously, they were in the same group as each other going through, which kind of makes this a little bit of an annoying matchup that they're back together again. So when they met in qualifying last year, it was 1-1 in Slovenia. It was 2-1 to Denmark in Denmark. So should probably tell us that Denmark have a slight edge, but Slovenia's results around that were pretty good. Beat the weaker sides like Northern Ireland, San Marino and Finland, that kind of thing. Friendlies this year, beat Portugal 2-0. That's the standout one, but I don't know how much you ever want to read into that. Both goals were quite late on. Drew with Bulgaria again just before the tournament. How much do you want to read into it? Not a huge amount. So I expect Denmark to be the more progressive side. I expect Denmark to have to work quite hard to make openings and so on, but there's enough quality there, let's say, in the Denmark lineup that they should be able to just not necessarily open them up at will or anything like that, but certainly create enough chances. The more interesting thing is obviously how Denmark set up. They were wing-backs for quite a long time. When we saw Joachim Mahler come through and being a real goal-scoring threat, it was because he was getting forward so far from wing-back positions. They've gone back to that again in the build-up to this. They had played a back four for a little while beforehand, but it looks like they'll be sort of 5 at the back or 3 at the back, and hopefully 2 pushing forward as often and as much as possible. And I kind of like the back 3 for them. Like if you've got Anderson and Christensen playing on a fairly regular basis, I think that's a really good central defensive partnership. But if they're only going to have one of them in the middle, then at least you know you've got a really good backup. Hjulmand in midfield, very, very strong. Jensen maybe plays as well. I think they've got really good options. I think they've got a really good setup. And I think enough of their players are decent that they will create chances. They've got a really good structure and everybody knows the role, how they create chances, basically. And I think that's what usually gets them through. If Højlund fires and be's the focal point that they need to just put the ball in the net sometimes, I think it's very, very positive for them.
Yeah, and there's a couple of really likeable players in this squad. I mean, you mentioned Morten Hjulmand. He's been outstanding the last 3 years, first with Lecce and now at Sporting. I really like Victor Christensen, the left back, who's owned by Leicester, but spent the past season on loan at Bologna and was great for them. Obviously, there's a whole cast of Premier League players with the likes of Norgard and Jensen, and it's half of Brentford. Really, it is just half of Brentford.
It's half of Brentford and Leicester. That's most of the squad.
I do think
now's the time to save 30% on wedding jewelry, only on BlueNile.com. Make sure your wedding ring is the one with your pick of diamond and lab-grown diamond bands, all hand-finished and graded for excellence. Or surprise her with something blue she'll love for life, like a stunning pair of sapphire earrings. Blue Nile's jewelry experts are available 24/7 to help, from fit questions to style advice. Right now, get up to 30% off at BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at Marines.com.
I really hope that both Anderson and Christensen are playing, because if it's Kjær and Vestergaard are 2/3 of the back 3, then I have real concerns. Frankly, if Kjær or Vestergaard are on the pitch, I have some concerns. But it should be good. I think it'll be a decent enough game. But for Slovenia to have any chance, Sesko is going to need to be ruthless in front of goal, because he's probably not going to get many chances. But more importantly, they're going to need Jan Oblak to go full mutant Oblak and just perform miracles, because they're going to have less of the ball in every single game. They're going to have a talent deficit in every single game. And that means they're probably going to give up a lot of chances, and he's going to have to be at his very best if they want any chance of even being the 3rd place team in this group.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that there is quite a lot of emphasis on this game as well for Slovenia. I do think they'll have to come out and really look to get at least a draw, I think, on this one. Like, if you get a draw and you've given yourself a lot of optimism, confidence and all the rest of it, and then you've got Serbia in the next match, that's a huge game. But, you might fancy yourself being on a bit of a crest of a wave. You probably don't want to go into the last game and need a result against England. Even if England have sort of won both their games and are already through, they've got enough depth there that they can come in and have players, attacking players, who want to make an impact and carve through you. You have to go and get a result. So I think a lot rests on this one for Slovenia. If they get a draw, they've got a chance at least of 3rd, because 4 points, I think, will guarantee everybody going through who gets 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, big ask.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Serbs. Like, even though Serbia would have a lot more talent than Slovenia, we've seen the lack of performance from them. You definitely don't want to go into the England game needing anything, because, as you said, it would actually suit England if they've heavily rotated and they're just kind of sitting back and letting you come on to them, because England have so much strength and depth in attack that they'll murder you on the counter. And there's going to be a lot of players in that England group who feel like they should be starting and won't be starting. And if they get one opportunity to start, they'll need to lay a marker down to say to Southgate, look at the performance I've put in. When it comes to the round of 16, I need to be in this team. Because in all likelihood, one of Foden, Palmer and Saka isn't starting. Maybe even two of them, depending on what he decides to do. There's going to be pressure on these players to perform when they step on the pitch. So you don't want to go into that game needing anything. So you're going for the draw, Slovenia versus Denmark, yeah?
No, I will go for a Denmark win. I just think it's really important that Slovenia try and get it. So I'll go for 2-1 to Denmark.
I'll go 1-0 to the Danes. Right, that leads us on then to Serbia versus England. England obviously beaten finalists in the last European Championships. This could be Gareth Southgate's last tournament in charge. It looked very much like it was going to be, and that he might then take on the reins at Manchester United in what would have been a wonderful, very smart move by Manchester United, in my opinion. I mean, when you look at the players in that Serbian squad, Karl, they should be well set up to really give England some problems. You know, with big, powerful strikers, with powerful midfielders. But, my God, they're just a disappointment time and time again. I do like this England squad. I think the manager made brave decisions in leaving out Henderson, in leaving out Maguire. I know Maguire's injured, but like Luke Shaw was injured as well, and he's still in the squad. So I'm not buying that Maguire was going to miss the whole tournament with an injury. He left out Calvin Phillips. Obviously, he'd had a disastrous season. They're players that had always been part of his squads. And he's made some brave calls, you know. Adam Wharton, Mainu. I think the decision to give Mark Wehi the reins at centre-back is long overdue. I do have concerns about what they do at left-back and about that double pivot in midfield, because I don't like the idea of Trent and Rice as a double pivot. I don't like the idea of Trent in a double pivot anyway, but I don't like the idea of Trent and Rice. I think the front four is going to be dynamite regardless of what he does, because he's got so many good options. It's nearly impossible not to pick a really good four. But I have concerns in defence with the left-back position, and also the significant decline of Kyle Walker. And then I have concerns in that midfield.
Yeah, I think that it's unusual that you get one of the favourites come to the tournament and still so many questions about who's playing where. That's quite an odd thing. We've basically got, the goalkeeper, one centre-back, one midfielder, the striker, and one of the wide forwards. Those are the only ones you absolutely know, because it wouldn't be wild because there's been so much news about Trent probably playing and therefore it'll be centre mid, if it suddenly was Trent at right back. Like, that wouldn't be outrageous at all. So we don't definitely know Walker is the one for the entirety of the tournament. We don't know that Trent obviously will stay wherever he plays. We don't know if Trippier will do well enough to stay at left back. It will be Guehi now, and it should be, but for a while it wasn't, and it didn't look like it was going to be. So it's unusual, let's say that. But with that, as we've said with other teams, comes opportunity for certain players, for new relationships and partnerships to develop on the pitch and have really good partnerships, which England should have. I think it's quite an exciting tournament, but it a little bit feels like you could have started this sort of halfway through last season, to be honest. Like, quite a lot of the players who are playing well now coming towards the end of the campaign, and they've been included suddenly. Like, I don't see any reason why you couldn't have had, let's say, two of the qualifiers in October or March with, let's say, Bowen and Gordon as your wide forwards. Bowen had a great start to the year. Gordon had a really good start with Newcastle after, who'd they buy from Leicester? Barnes. He went down injured quite early on in the campaign. Gordon had to play all the time on the left, and he was really good. And Bowen started the season up front, scoring loads of goals. So you could have had an October qualifier or something like that, where they were in form and they were in the group and they were playing, and it looked like they would be in the squad. But nobody was still sure 3 weeks before the tournament whether they'd even be in the group.
Yeah.
So it's quite an odd, almost, not a rebuild, but like an almost new group, certainly in terms of, let's say, the not spine of the team. So I think England should still go well. I think there's enough good players here, and they have played, in and around the group a lot. So I don't see that a team like Serbia, who have potential but are not cohesive, will have enough to break them down in the tournament game. Again, I don't really pay too much attention to how England played in the friendlies and all of that. I mean, what you can say from Serbia is, again, if you don't want to pay attention to the friendly games, fine, but out of the last, I think it's 11 games, they've won 4, and that includes qualifiers. It includes their running games. Obviously, the last qualifier that they had was at home to Bulgaria. They didn't win that one. They've lost to Austria in one of their build. It's not been amazing.
No, it hasn't. Now, the one area I do think the Serbs could hurt England is off set pieces. Yeah. I think that's the one area where Maguire would have had value. Because if you look at the Serbian team, if Pavlovic, Milinkovic, Savic, Mitrovic and Vlahovic are all on the pitch, they're all kind of 6'3" and above, all very, very good in the air. And England don't have a really dominant aerial player. And without...
He's just bad at everything else.
Lewis Dunk?
Yeah. He's the one who has the numbers aerially, but bad things on the ground, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he's coming off a terrible season. And so I think he's probably unlikely to play, but even he can't match up with all of those options by himself. And he'd be quite easy to block off if you're a well-coached team, which I don't know if Serbia are going to be. But England have so many great options. I mean, you just look at that forward group. You've got Kane, Tony, Watkins and Bowen could all play as 9s. Now, we know Kane will start, but at least Southgate has the options to bring on others if Kane is tired or needs a break or even if he's just not playing well. On the right-hand side, you've got Saka, Foden, Palmer, and Bowen can all do a job there to a high level. In the number 10 position, you've got Bellingham, the likely starter, plus Foden, plus Palmer. The question I have, Karl, is over the left wing spot. Because when I look at the options that are there, the only one that I really... And I'm not a huge fan of him, but the only one I like as an option on the left is Anthony Gordon. Now, I think Watkins could play there as well. That's where he made his name at Exeter and then at Brentford before being converted to a 9 by Thomas Frank. But I do just look at that group and think it's very heavily leaning towards the other 3 positions and not so much the left wing. And that is in part down to Raheem Sterling being just excommunicated for whatever reason, and Marcus Rashford's collapse in form. Otherwise, one or both of them would have been in the squad. Somebody's going to be played out of position on the left. It's likely going to be Phil Foden. I don't think it gets the best out of him, but I do think there's more than enough in the other 3 positions that it's not really going to matter. But what does concern me a little bit is if it's Saka, Bellingham, Foden behind Kane, there's no real lightning pace in that group. I mean, Saka's quick, Foden's quick, but there's nobody that you'd fancy to make the run in behind the fullback and be an outlet in the way Rashford has been in previous tournaments. And that's why I do wonder if Anthony Gordon should be starting. Because I don't think he's anywhere near as good as the likes of Foden or Saka. But I do wonder if that pace would have a bit more value than what one of them would have playing out of position.
Yeah, I mean, Eze is obviously the other one who you've got who can play left to do similar sort of job. But again, he's much more coming in field than sprinting in behind. So I do think Gordon will get starts, and I do think he'll be required to start out there for that exact job. But it may be at times in matches or for specific matches if that's how it's developing. Obviously, if England are really dominating, they're going to be a bit higher upfield anyway. So maybe that's not the only job that you want them to be able to do. I think that's even maybe putting Saka over there to play left wing to run in behind on his left foot is an option at times if you want a Palmer or a Foden to come in field and play from the right. I think there's too much in this England team to really be worried about going through the group, regardless of who starts. But obviously those early games are going to determine who stays in the team for the knockouts as well.
Yeah, it is a fairly straightforward group. Can I just ask, who are you more surprised was included in the squad? Ivan Toney, given he had a really poor season, obviously missed half of it, and there was the presence of Kane and Watkins already, so bringing a third number 9 for a team playing 4-2-3-1, or Jared Bowen, just given Foden, Saka, Palmer all have preference for that right-hand side?
I was more surprised about Toney because he's been fairly poor towards the end of the season. Didn't have a good run of scoring, obviously. Didn't really, I don't think, contribute enormously to a good end of the season for the team or anything like that. I guess he's there because he is a little bit Kane light, much more so than Watkins is. But yeah, I don't think his form necessarily warranted it. And if it was just about having a third centre-forward option, Bowen can be that anyway. So I don't think that Tony's going to play a huge amount, but we will see.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same, and I do wonder if it's in part because Southgate was forced to leave him out of the World Cup squad when he would have been in the World Cup squad because of the betting ban, and maybe Southgate wanted to, just to keep him, because you're going to want him after this tournament as well, and you're going to need him engaged. Right, prediction for England versus Serbia.
I'm actually going to go fairly big on either England playing well or Serbia collapsing, whichever way you want to see it. I'm going to go 3-1 to England.
Oh, okay. I like that. I do like that. I'll go 2-1. I just think there could be some nerves with England. I do think they'll win. I do think they'll control the game. But I just could see some nerves at certain points. And maybe a little bit of, certain players playing out of position, particularly that left-hand side. Sounds like it might be very makeshift with Trippier behind Foden. So and Foden hasn't done all that well for England to this point. So there might just be a little bit of a weakness there. I think there'll be a bit of a weakness defending set pieces. So I'll go 2-1, but I do think they'll win the game and control it. Right, we will leave it there then. We will be back.
We will not. I've got some predictions for you to do beforehand.
Oh, I like this. Let's go.
I did send this out to work, so I was meant to do it with you on the first one, but I ran out of time. So you're going to have 9. I did have 10 questions, but 1 has already been answered. So quick fire, you can pick. Guy's going to pick. We'll read out his next time, and people at home can play along as well and see if they beat you, basically.
Okay.
Losing team in the final.
Losing team in the final, I have Germany.
Germany. Does Jared Bowen play under or over 59 minutes at the tournament?
Over. I think he'll start one game, maybe the last group game. I think he'll get 1 or 2 sub appearances as well.
Right. So everybody else has had how many goals will Scotland score in total? But since they've already played, I will pick someone else for you. How many goals will Austria score in total?
2.
In the whole tournament, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Who gets furthest, or are they all the same? Serbia, Croatia, Czech Republic.
Croatia. I think they get to the quarterfinals. I don't think the other two get out of the groups.
Which team is awarded the most penalties at the tournament?
France.
Well, the other question was, in which match number did we get the tournament's first red card? We've already had that, so we'll take that question.
Match number 1.
Yeah. In order of the most group points, high to low, Albania, Slovenia, Romania, Georgia.
Georgia. Albania. Georgia, Albania. No, Georgia. Romania, Slovenia, Albania.
Okay. Which 2 nations finish third but don't go through to the last 16?
I will go Serbia, and I will go Romania.
Who gets the most goals and assists combined out of Dembele, Saka, Musiala, Olmo and Leao?
Musiala.
And finally, who will play more minutes, Jeremy Doku or Leroy Sané?
Ooh, Doku. I'll go Jeremy Doku.
There you go. There's Dave's answers. We'll read out, guys, next time. Play along at home and tell Dave when you beat him.
Yeah, and you will all beat me because I'm dreadful at predictions. Right, then we will leave it there. And we will be back on Monday, folks. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the games. And Karl, I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.